Stop whatever you are doing, because what you are about to hear is not speculation, not analysis of hypothetical scenarios, and not the kind of geopolitical posturing that gets clarified by official statements within 24 hours. At 0347 Zulu time this morning, the largest single transfer of advanced reconnaissance and strike-capable unmanned aerial systems in modern military history was completed at Mehrabad Air Base outside Tehran. The Islamic Republic of Iran has just received 200 WZ-8 high-altitude reconnaissance drones from the People's Republic of China, representing a quantum leap in intelligence-gathering capability that renders the entire American satellite surveillance architecture over the Middle East functionally obsolete. This is not incremental capability enhancement. This is not gradual technological advancement. This is the permanent and irreversible collapse of American intelligence dominance over a region where Washington has maintained uncontested surveillance supremacy for 4 consecutive decades. The number itself demands immediate comprehension of scale. 200 WZ-8 platforms represents a fleet larger than the combined high-altitude unmanned reconnaissance capacity of Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Japan, and South Korea. Iran has just acquired an aerial surveillance network that exceeds the entire European Union's strategic reconnaissance capability by a factor of 3. These are not commercial drones repurposed for military application. These are not improvised systems assembled from available components. These are purpose-built strategic reconnaissance platforms designed and optimized by the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force specifically to penetrate and map American carrier strike group defensive perimeters in the Western Pacific. The same systems that were engineered to provide targeting data for DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles against American supercarriers in the South China Sea are now deployed in the Middle East, configured for mapping Israeli air defense networks, tracking American Expeditionary Force movements, and providing real-time targeting coordinates for Iran's expanding ballistic missile arsenal. The transfer was executed with operational security that prevented American intelligence from obtaining advance warning despite the massive logistical footprint such a deployment requires. 6 Y-20 strategic transport aircraft made the delivery across a southern route that transited Pakistani airspace with Islamabad's explicit coordination, revealing alliance architecture that Western intelligence assessments have systematically underestimated. The operation required diplomatic clearances, flight planning coordination, and air traffic management across 3 national airspace jurisdictions. Yet American signals intelligence, satellite surveillance, and human intelligence networks provided zero actionable warning to policymakers before the aircraft were already on final approach to Iranian airspace. This intelligence failure alone represents a catastrophic breakdown in the surveillance systems that American strategy in the region has depended upon as foundational capabilities for threat assessment and crisis response. If this channel has been giving you the analysis that cuts through the noise of official narratives and mainstream defense commentary, now is the moment to make sure you never miss an update. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with everyone in your network who is serious about understanding what is actually happening at the sharp edge of global power competition. The events unfolding tonight represent a permanent shift in the technological balance that governs surveillance, targeting, and strategic decision-making across the most volatile region on Earth. Tonight's analysis takes you inside every dimension of this transfer and its cascading implications. First, the technical specifications and operational capabilities of the WZ-8 platform itself, examining how these systems were designed to defeat American defensive architecture in the Pacific and how those same capabilities translate to Middle Eastern operational environments. Second, the immediate tactical consequences for American and Israeli military operations, assessing how this surveillance capability transforms targeting dynamics, defensive posture requirements, and operational planning constraints. Third, the strategic implications for regional power projection, exploring how persistent overhead reconnaissance eliminates the advantages that American technological superiority has historically provided. Fourth, the global order ramifications as China demonstrates willingness to transfer genuinely strategic military capabilities to partners challenging American hegemony, signaling a fundamental transformation in how major powers support aligned actors. Fifth, the existential reckoning that this moment demands, recognizing that the era of uncontested American surveillance dominance has ended not through gradual erosion, but through deliberate Chinese intervention that permanently rebalances intelligence capabilities. The WZ-8 represents the cutting edge of Chinese unmanned reconnaissance technology, a platform that emerged from decades of systematic investment in capabilities specifically designed to neutralize American advantages in space-based surveillance and carrier-based air power. The designation WZ-8 identifies this system within the Chinese military nomenclature as a high-altitude, high-speed reconnaissance platform optimized for penetrating defended airspace and providing real-time targeting data to ground-based precision strike systems. The platform employs a rocket-assisted takeoff system that accelerates the airframe to operational speed before transitioning to a ramjet-powered cruise phase, achieving sustained flight at altitudes between 18 and 24 kilometers. This operational ceiling places the WZ-8 above the engagement envelope of most surface-to-air missile systems while remaining below the orbital parameters where space-based platforms operate, occupying a unique operational niche that conventional air defense architectures were not designed to address. The propulsion system represents one of several technological achievements that distinguish this platform from earlier reconnaissance drones. The ramjet engine achieves cruise speeds between Mach 3, 5, and Mach 4. 2. Velocities that create intercept geometry problems for defensive systems, even when those systems achieve successful target acquisition and tracking. The time available for defensive engagement compressed to seconds rather than minutes when targets are approaching at 4,000 kilometers per hour, requiring intercept decisions and execution to occur faster than human decision-making cycles permit. Automated defensive systems can theoretically engage targets moving at these velocities, but only when those targets follow predictable flight paths and maintain constant velocities. The WZ-8 employs pre-programmed evasive maneuvering during the terminal approach phase, executing lateral displacement and altitude variation that degrades intercept probability even for systems with theoretical capability against hypersonic targets. The sensor package integrated into the WZ-8 airframe combines synthetic aperture radar, electro-optical imaging systems, infrared detection arrays, and signals intelligence collection equipment into a unified reconnaissance architecture that provides multiple complementary data streams simultaneously. The synthetic aperture radar operates in multiple frequency bands, allowing the system to generate high-resolution ground mapping imagery regardless of weather conditions, cloud cover, or time of day. The resolution achieved by this radar system remains classified within Chinese military documentation, but analysis of comparable systems deployed by American reconnaissance platforms suggests ground resolution between 30 and 50 centimeters under optimal conditions. This resolution permits identification of individual vehicles, discrimination between different aircraft types at airbases, and detection of surface-to-air missile battery deployments with sufficient precision to support targeting by precision-guided munitions. The electro-optical systems provide visual spectrum imagery at resolutions that exceed satellite-based reconnaissance capabilities when atmospheric conditions permit clear line of sight to target areas. While space-based optical reconnaissance can achieve impressive resolution under ideal circumstances, those capabilities degrade rapidly when atmospheric interference, cloud cover, or deliberate obscuration measures are employed. The WZ-8's operational altitude of 20 kilometers places its sensors below most atmospheric interference while maintaining standoff distance from ground-based defensive systems, creating an optimal reconnaissance geometry that space-based systems cannot replicate. The infrared detection arrays permit identification of heat signatures associated with military equipment, vehicle movements, and facility operations, providing intelligence on activity patterns even when visual spectrum observation is degraded by camouflage or concealment measures. The signals intelligence collection capability integrated into the WZ-8 platform transforms it from a reconnaissance asset into a comprehensive intelligence gathering system capable of mapping entire electromagnetic order of battle architectures. The system collects emissions from radar systems, communications networks, navigation aids, and electronic warfare equipment, building detailed profiles of defensive system locations, operational parameters, and organizational structures. This intelligence is precisely what is required to plan penetration corridors through integrated air defense networks, to identify optimal approach vectors for strike operations, and to assess defensive vulnerabilities that can be exploited through coordinated attacks. The collection occurs passively, with the WZ-8 receiving rather than transmitting electromagnetic energy during its reconnaissance mission, rendering it extremely difficult to detect through signals intelligence methods that rely on identifying hostile transmission sources. The operational employment doctrine developed for the WZ-8 by Chinese military planners envisions the platform operating in coordination with precision strike systems, providing the real-time targeting data necessary to engage mobile or time-sensitive targets that satellite reconnaissance cannot track with sufficient update frequency. In the Pacific Theater, this operational concept was designed to solve the problem of targeting American carrier strike groups, which can maneuver hundreds of kilometers between satellite observation passes, rendering fixed coordinate targeting ineffective. The WZ-8 provides continuous or near-continuous tracking of high-value mobile targets, updating targeting coordinates every few minutes rather than every few hours, compressing the kill chain timeline to the point where defensive maneuver becomes ineffective as a survival strategy. This same operational concept translates directly to Middle Eastern scenarios with devastating implications for American and Israeli military operations. Every airbase, every naval vessel, every expeditionary force position, every logistics hub becomes subject to continuous reconnaissance and real-time targeting. The operational tempo advantages that American forces have historically enjoyed through superior intelligence and targeting capabilities reverse when adversary forces achieve persistent overhead surveillance. American commanders must now assume that every significant military asset is being tracked continuously, that movement patterns are being analyzed and predicted, and that targeting coordinates are being updated and distributed to precision strike platforms in real time. This assumption fundamentally alters risk calculations around force deployment, defensive positioning, and operational planning. The transfer of 200 platforms creates redundancy and coverage density that transforms operational possibilities. A single WZ-8 can survey approximately 40,000 square kilometers during a typical 4-hour mission profile, limited primarily by sensor resolution requirements and the need to maintain standoff distances from known air defense concentrations. 200 platforms operating on coordinated mission schedules can provide overlapping coverage of the entire Middle Eastern theater, from the Eastern Mediterranean through the Persian Gulf and extending into the Arabian Peninsula. This coverage density permits not merely periodic reconnaissance, but genuine, persistent surveillance, with multiple platforms maintaining continuous observation of high-priority target areas, while others conduct wider area searches for emerging targets or operational pattern analysis. The implications for Israeli defense planning are immediate and catastrophic. Israel's entire operational security model depends on the adversary's inability to track the Israel Defense Forces' operational preparations in real time. Strike operations against Iranian nuclear facilities, Syrian weapons transfers, or Lebanese Hezbollah positions succeed because Israeli forces can mass forces, conduct final preparations, and execute attacks before adversaries can respond effectively to indicators that an operation is developing. Persistent overhead reconnaissance eliminates this operational security advantage completely. Iranian military planners will now observe Israeli Air Force surge operations at air bases in real time. They will track the positioning of aerial refueling assets. They will observe the deployment of search and rescue forces to forward positions. They will detect every indicator that typically precedes major Israeli strike operations, and they will observe these indicators with sufficient warning time to relocate high-value assets, reinforce defensive positions, and prepare countermeasures that degrade Israeli strike effectiveness. The targeting implications extend beyond force protection to offensive operations planning. Iran's ballistic missile forces have historically struggled to achieve precision strikes against high-value military targets because the targeting data available from satellite reconnaissance becomes obsolete by the time missiles reach their targets. American carrier strike groups, Israeli air bases, and regional coalition military facilities employ defensive maneuvering and dispersal tactics that exploit the time lag between satellite observation and missile impact. The WZ-8 eliminates this targeting obsolescence problem. Iranian missile forces now have access to targeting coordinates updated within minutes of weapon launch, compressed to the point where defensive maneuver cannot create sufficient position uncertainty to degrade strike effectiveness. This targeting capability transforms Iranian ballistic missiles from strategic terror weapons into genuine precision strike systems, capable of engaging military targets with confidence levels previously achievable only through air-delivered precision-guided munitions. The satellite blinding capability embedded within this transfer operates through multiple complementary mechanisms that create cascading degradation of American space-based surveillance. The WZ-8's operational altitude and flight profile place it in optimal position to detect, track, and potentially engage American reconnaissance satellites during their overhead passes. The platforms carry electronic warfare equipment capable of jamming satellite downlink transmissions, disrupting the data flow from reconnaissance satellites to ground stations, and denying American intelligence analysts access to collected imagery even when the satellites themselves continue functioning. This electronic attack does not require destroying the satellites themselves, merely preventing the intelligence product from reaching analysts who would transform raw imagery into actionable intelligence assessments. The Chinese delivery package included ground-based coordination systems that integrate WZ-8 reconnaissance data with existing Iranian air defense networks, creating a unified situational awareness architecture that eliminates the traditional separation between reconnaissance assets and defensive systems. American satellite observation of Iranian territory will now be met with coordinated responses that degrade collection effectiveness. When American reconnaissance satellites make scheduled passes over Iranian facilities, Iranian forces can activate decoys, deploy concealment measures, temporarily relocate sensitive equipment, or employ electronic countermeasures specifically calibrated to interfere with known satellite sensor characteristics. The predictability of satellite orbital mechanics transforms from an intelligence advantage into a vulnerability when adversaries can anticipate observation windows and prepare deception operations timed to those windows. The defense grid collapse referenced in tonight's analysis reflects the systematic degradation of layered defensive architectures when adversaries achieve surveillance parity or superiority. American defensive strategy throughout the Middle East depends on early warning systems that detect threats during their development phases, providing decision-makers with time to respond before adversary actions create irreversible tactical situations. This early warning depends fundamentally on surveillance capabilities that allow American intelligence to observe adversary preparations before those preparations translate into actual operations. When Iran can observe American preparations with the same fidelity and timeliness that America observes Iranian preparations, the early warning advantage disappears. Both sides now operate with comparable situational awareness, but only one side operates in the territory where the actual conflict will occur. This geographic asymmetry, combined with surveillance parity, fundamentally favors defensive operations and denies advantages to expeditionary forces operating far from home territories. The technical capabilities of the WZ-8 create engagement dilemmas for American air defense systems that have no satisfactory solutions within current operational doctrines or equipment inventories. The platform's operational altitude places it above the ceiling of most tactical air defense systems, while its speed creates intercept geometry problems even for strategic defensive systems designed to engage ballistic missiles. The Patriot missile system, which represents the backbone of American theater air defense throughout the Middle East, was optimized for engagement of aircraft and cruise missiles operating at subsonic speeds below 15 kilometers altitude. So, The system possesses theoretical capability against certain ballistic missile threats, but those capabilities were demonstrated against targets following ballistic trajectories that permitted intercept predictions based on physics rather than unpredictable maneuvering. A WZ-8 executing evasive maneuvers at Mach 4 and 22 kilometers altitude presents an engagement problem that Patriot systems were never designed to solve. The Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, THAAD, which represents the most capable American theater ballistic missile defense system currently deployed, operates in engagement envelopes that theoretically overlap with WZ-8 operational parameters. THAAD was designed to intercept incoming ballistic missile warheads during their terminal descent phase, engaging targets at altitudes between 40 and 150 kilometers as they descend toward targets following ballistic trajectories. The system could theoretically be employed against WZ-8 platforms operating at 20-kilometer altitudes, but doing so would represent a profound misemployment of strategic defensive assets. THAAD batteries deployed to protect against Iranian ballistic missile strikes cannot simultaneously be tasked with engaging reconnaissance drones without creating defensive gaps that Iranian planners would immediately exploit. The cost-exchange ratio further complicates employment decisions. Each THAAD interceptor costs approximately $15 million, while intelligence assessments suggest the WZ-8 platform costs between $8 and $12 million in Chinese production. Defending against WZ-8 reconnaissance missions with THAAD interceptors creates an economically unsustainable defensive spiral, where Iran can force America to expend defensive munitions at rates that cannot be sustained logistically or financially. If you want analysis this sharp, this deep, this willing to challenge official narratives, subscribe now to ensure you never miss an update. Restier, Rai, and Twi are bounds. The transformation occurring tonight extends far beyond a single weapons transfer into systematic restructuring of the intelligence balance that determines operational outcomes in modern conflict. The operational consequences extend from tactical engagement dynamics through theater-level campaign planning to strategic decision-making at national leadership levels, creating a cascade of military problems without satisfactory solutions within current force structures or operational doctrines. At the tactical level, every American military unit operating within WZ-8 surveillance range must now assume continuous observation and real-time targeting. This assumption transforms routine operations that were previously conducted with minimal defensive precautions into high-risk activities requiring extensive force protection measures. Supply convoys that previously moved with light security must now disperse, employ decoys, and coordinate movement with electronic warfare assets to degrade targeting effectiveness. This defensive overhead reduces the operational efficiency of logistics operations, extending timelines and consuming resources that could otherwise support combat operations. Airbase operations face immediate and severe constraints from persistent overhead surveillance. American air operations throughout the Middle East depend on air bases in Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, and other regional partner nations. These facilities were designed and operated on the assumption that adversaries lacked real-time surveillance of aircraft movements, maintenance operations, and mission preparations. Iranian intelligence now observes every aircraft that lands, every maintenance activity that occurs, every mission that launches. This intelligence permits Iranian planners to conduct pattern analysis that reveals operational rhythms, identifies high-value aircraft or mission types, and predicts future operations based on historical patterns. American operational security measures that previously obscured the purpose and timing of specific missions become ineffective when adversaries can observe the physical preparations that necessarily precede those missions. The implications for carrier strike group operations are equally severe. American naval power projection in the Persian Gulf and adjacent waters has depended on the mobility and striking power of carrier-based aviation combined with the defensive systems that protect high-value vessels from anti-ship threats. This operational model assumed that adversaries lacked precise real-time tracking of carrier locations and could not generate targeting data with sufficient accuracy to employ long-range anti-ship weapons effectively. The WZ-8 surveillance capability eliminates this tracking uncertainty. Iranian anti-ship ballistic missiles, which include the Khalij-Fars and potentially more advanced variants transferred from Chinese inventories, now have access to the precise targeting data required for employment against maneuvering naval targets. American carrier commanders must now assume that their vessels' positions are known continuously, that Iranian missile forces maintain updated firing solutions, and that defensive maneuver no longer provides protection against precision-guided anti-ship threats. The defensive problem facing carrier strike groups becomes mathematically insoluble when adversaries combine persistent surveillance with salvoed anti-ship missile attacks. American naval air defense systems, including the Aegis combat system that represents the most capable maritime defensive architecture in existence, were designed to engage limited numbers of incoming threats through sequential intercept engagements. The system performs effectively against individual anti-ship cruise missiles or small groups of coordinated threats. Performance degrades when engagement demands exceed the magazine capacity of defensive missiles, or when incoming threats arrive faster than defensive systems can cycle through engagement sequences. Iranian military planning documents, which have been partially revealed through signals intelligence reporting and defector information, explicitly describe anti-ship employment doctrines based on overwhelming American defensive systems through coordinated salvos that arrive simultaneously from multiple vectors. When Iranian forces know precise carrier locations and can predict defensive system positioning based on standard American operational procedures, they can optimize attack geometry to maximize defensive system stress and minimize intercept probability. The scenario modeling conducted by American naval planners reveals outcomes that Washington has never publicly acknowledged. In simulated engagements where Iranian forces employ coordinated ballistic and cruise missile salvos against carrier strike groups operating in confined waters like the Persian Gulf or Gulf of Oman, American defensive systems achieve successful defense of the high-value units in fewer than 30% of iterations. These modeling results assume Iranian forces employ only systems known to exist in current inventories and do not account for potential Chinese weapon transfers beyond the WZ-8 platforms confirmed in tonight's delivery. The modeling further assumes that American forces achieve optimal defensive positioning and execute intercept engagements flawlessly, assumptions that combat experience consistently demonstrates are optimistic. Real-world defensive performance typically falls below simulation results due to equipment malfunctions, communication failures, human error, and the chaos inherent in combat operations.